Hello and welcome back. My name is Sean, also known as ChilliChump. Today I'm going to show you two simple sambal recipes. If you don't know what sambal is an Indonesian spicy treat. Sambal basically means hot sauce or hot paste. And there are many variations of sambal recipes. One that you may be familiar with, if you've seen it in the store, is probably sambal ulek. And I'm actually going to be showing you two variations today of sambal. One is kind of an ulek, and the other one is just one that I've been experimenting with for a little while. First things first, we need to get out to the greenhouses and pick ourselves some fresh chilies. I'm using chilies that should be accessible to you even if you don't grow chilies like I do. The chilies we're using are cayenne, and these are beautiful. These here are actually cayenne long slim, but normal cayenne will do the job just fine. A traditional sambal ulek is actually really simple. It's just ripe fresh chilies ground up with some salt. Maybe a little bit of vinegar, maybe a little bit of oil, but that's it. Now obviously, I've made a few changes and I'm going to show that to you today. Let's get straight into the recipe. The first and most important ingredient is our freshly picked ripe cayenne. Now, you need about 250 grams for this recipe, but you can scale the recipe up or down as you need. All we need to do here is get rid of these stems. We're just going to roughly chop these up. Now you notice I'm not wearing gloves. These are cayenne. They do have some heat, but they aren't too bad. With the next chilies we're going to use, I definitely will be using gloves. I prefer to use a coarsely ground salt because I believe this helps to get the flavors out of the chilies. It also helps with the grinding process. You can crush the garlic with the pestle and mortar, but I prefer to give it a bit of a helping hand by using this beauty. If you are interested in getting one of these, I will leave a link down in the description below, but that is just awesome. The last ingredient is one that you've got to be a little careful with. It is fennel. Now fennel has a kind of a licorice aniseed taste to it, and you really don't want a lot of this stuff in there. You just want a couple kernels, maybe 5 or 6. So you can see I'm really not going too heavy in this at all. And if you do go too heavy, then you just get an overwhelming licorice taste, and that's not good. But that little bit of fennel there really enhances this flavor beautifully. There is actually one last ingredient that needs to be added, and this is to add a bit of acidity, helps with the shelf life, and it also will just bring out those flavors just so much nicer. And that is rice wine vinegar. You really don't need a lot. We're going to use about a tablespoon of it, and that's going to be ground in. And that is, I promise, the very last ingredient in here. How long you grind it for is really up to you. You're looking for a consistency more like a chutney than an actual sauce. And I mean, this is close. I probably could go a little bit longer, but I need to move on to doing the next sambal for you guys. So I think I might just leave it at that and actually give it a taste. I'm looking forward to tasting this. But there you can see, yeah, it could be a little bit more ground up, but the flavors at least will all be nicely together. I would recommend when you make this that because you've added things like garlic and fennel, you want this to sit for a little bit in the fridge, maybe overnight, and that'll really bring those flavors out nicely. But if you're impatient like me and you want to use it straight away, then go for it. It smells very, very fresh, because it is fresh. Don't know how else to really describe it. You don't really get a lot of the garlic coming through, but you will taste it. And well, that's all that's left to do really, is give this a taste. Some heat to it. You'd be surprised how much of the fennel comes through. It's a flavor that comes in after the freshness of the chilies, the garlic. Not too overwhelming, but that is so good. Sambal, what would you have that on? Pretty much anything. Obviously, I eat meat, so I would have this on a lot of things like steak, chops, things like that. Chicken, everything goes well with chicken. But you could use this as a bit of a sprinkling on top of vegetables if you're going to grill them. We have a lot of courgettes at the moment, so I'd use a little bit of this as a paste over the top of the courgette, maybe a little bit more salt, and put that in the oven. Tastes fantastic. You can, of course, grind this down some more, make it into more of a paste than it is right now, but that's what's great about sambal. Do it however you like, do it to your preference. I would probably do this a little bit more than this for me, but not to the point of being a paste. I still want little chunks in there and things like that. My mouth is watering because that is hot. Man, where's my heat tolerance going? I think I've got some pretty hot cayenne this year, but let's bottle this up and then move on to the next sambal that we're going to make today. The good news is this can be kept for a couple of weeks in the fridge if you need to. If you aren't going to use the whole amount, I'll probably get through this in the next few days. But if you do make a little bit of a bigger batch, then yeah, at least 2 weeks in the fridge, most likely longer, but I'm being a bit conservative there. What you can do is if you want to add a little bit more vinegar to increase the acidity and lower the pH, then you'll definitely increase the shelf life. There we go. We have our lovely sambal. Time for sambal recipe number 2. This one uses chilies I don't actually really like. And that's because it's traditionally used in West Indian style hot sauces, and the ones that I've had in the past have not been a massive fan of. The chili I'm talking about is the Scotch bonnet. Now, I've been trying to come up with recipes that use the Scotch bonnet because I actually think it's a very pretty chili. It's just the flavor I'm not a big fan of. I've got 2 this year that I think are actually going to be usable. For this recipe, I will definitely be using gloves, and I recommend you do as well. Scotch bonnets are pretty spicy. They're around 350,000 on the Scoville scale, so not exactly super hot, but they are hot. The last batch I made of this, it was a bit hit or miss. I'm making a small adjustment in this recipe, and hopefully that'll take away that familiar taste that I don't like from these Scotch bonnets. So touching the actual skin of the fruit, that's not going to do anything. It's when it opens up, when you start taking the stalk out, when you start chopping it up, and definitely when you start using the pestle and mortar, that is when it gets a little bit dangerous. We're going to be using about 100 grams of Scotch bonnets for this recipe, and again, you can scale it up or down if you want to make more or less of it. Just scale all the recipe ingredients the same way. I probably prefer to be using habaneros. Those taste much better in my opinion, but I'm a stubborn guy and I really want to get something that tastes good. As you can see, we are keeping the seeds. If you do want to bring the temperature down a little bit, then yeah, you can remove the seeds, but I want the heat. And you can, of course, do this with super hots as well. If you want to go and get a Carolina Reaper or 7-pot Primo and use those instead, then go for it. But you will need to make a few adjustments to the recipe because those can really overwhelm some of the flavors I'm going to be adding. You can obviously add sugar, or palm sugar is actually a good one. That's a traditional Indonesian ingredient that they use with these. But I'm trying to purposely use chilies that have some sweetness to them anyway. If you are going to use super hots, then of course they're not going to necessarily be as sweet as these, so you definitely will be needing to add sugar to those. Okay, and like we did before, we're going to be adding salt. 100 grams, you're going to be using 1 teaspoon of salt. Make it a heaped teaspoon. And you can always add more later, but you obviously can't take away. ginger. And this is what I'm using to offset some of that taste that I don't like in the Scotch bonnet. And we're going to go quite heavy on the ginger. We're going to go with that amount. It's about 70 grams, 60 to 70 grams. If you do like Scotch bonnet, then just go with about 40 grams of ginger. That'll do just fine. But yeah, if you're like me, you don't like that flavor, then let's work with that amount. I think that is about ready for me to try. It is smelling absolutely amazing and the textures are looking good. I think that is more than enough. Trying these sauces on an empty stomach is never a good idea, but gotta be done. That is pleasant, really pleasant actually. I think the ginger really helps pull that back. Pull back that little bit of a taste that I don't like from the Scotch bonnet. Decent amount of heat, not too much, which is good. I think the ginger obviously will bring that down a little bit. And the heat is building a little bit now. You know what would go really well with this, and Indonesian food does this quite a lot, and that is a bit of fish sauce, or even, dare I say, some anchovy fillets in there, I think, would just take it to that next level. And I think, actually, let me do that. I'm going to go get some fish sauce, and we're going to add that in there. I think it's missing that bit of umami, so give me 1 minute. All I'm going to be using is just a bit of fish sauce that you'd use in like a pad thai, things like that. And I'm going to be adding, I think, half a tablespoon of the fish sauce, and we'll see what that's like. We don't need to do too much to grind it up. We're just going to mix it all together. But there we go. Let's use my spoon. So of course this does create a little bit of a challenge if you are vegetarian or vegan. Obviously you can't use fish sauce, but what you can use instead is a little bit of tamarind. Obviously it's a different type of taste, but it does add a bit of umami. So a dash of tamarind paste would go well instead of this. Okay, let's try that again. It's just when you try these recipes, when you make these recipes, it's quite easy to tell when something's missing or if it's just not well balanced. And yeah, I like a balance of all the different flavors. Well, for most sauces, some sauces don't need all the flavor profiles in there, but this one, already I love the smell a bit better. Much better, and that was a spicier piece I just ate. Now there, that just elevates it, and I actually really enjoy that. That is really tasty, such a good combination of flavors, and yeah, that will go so well with so many different things. On fish, actually, I think will go really well. I think what I'm going to be doing with this in a couple of days' time, because I'm going to let it sit inside the fridge and just all the flavors come out and come together. I'm going to be using this to pan fry some prawns. I think that is going to be fantastic. Spicy, but it's going to taste amazing. Please do give these recipes a try. The first one especially, you should hopefully have some cayenne in your house anyway, but if not, your local supermarket I'm sure will have it. If you make sambal at home, if you've got an awesome recipe that you use, share it down below in the comments, and I'm keen to take a look, and I might even give it a try. But thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you on the next video, and until then, stay spicy. Hello, it's Sean here. Have a look around my channel for plenty more videos with spicy recipes, hot sauces, chilies and chili sauce reviews, how to grow your own chilies, and so much more. I wanted to say a huge thank you to my patrons and YouTube members. You folks are amazing. And if you want to have a chat with me, consider joining up to support my channel through YouTube memberships or Patreon. Stay spicy, my friends.